Good morning, my YouTube viewers. It's Palestine here. I just wanted to make another video concerning my cancer diagnosis. And I've said before in previous videos that I got this cancer from stress and trauma. And I just want to talk about some of the individuals that have given me stress and trauma which caused me to get cancer. And previously I talked about the deep state, and then I talked about my employer. Now I would like to talk about the people that I live with, and I want to pose the question is, should the people I live with be held accountable for my cancer diagnosis? And the reason why is because I live in a cooperative, and the road that I live on is notorious for drugs, but they managed to get most of the drugs out of the street, but it's probably still there. It's just gone underground. And one time somebody posted on Facebook saying, well, maybe they've got a different type of crime, because where I live, people are criminals. And so if they're not going to make money through selling substances, then they're going to make money another way. And basically, whenever I moved in here, I really had no choice because I'm destitute, really. I don't have any family. I don't have any dependents. I'm a vulnerable person, so I moved in to this cooperative because of that. But as soon as I moved in, it wasn't long when I moved in when I would come home and a big parcel would be sitting inside my door. So it was obvious that someone had been inside my apartment. Although where I live, they said that they didn't have keys to the apartment, but I don't believe it. And then basically, whenever I was being harassed out of my job at Foster Wheeler, run out of my job, mobbed out, I noticed that more people were coming into my flat. They were coming into my flat. They were damaging my clothing, damaging my property. And I'm not going to go into great detail about all of the things that they did because I don't want to give anybody any ideas. But they did damage my property and they damaged my clothing. And so I went to the coordinator who was supposed to be overseeing the flats, and I told him that people were coming into my apartment, and he said that it was because I gave people the key. And I said, no, it's not. It's not. And I got really angry. And I did actually join the management committee, but I'm no longer on the management committee anymore because they're not credible, they're not reliable, and they're not credible. And even somebody told me that that she had reservations, she had concerns about the management committee. And so I was harassed out of my job at Foster Wheeler. Not only were people coming into my apartment when I was at work, they would come into my apartment in the middle of the night. And I know that when I was sleeping, and I know that because I would sleep through the whole night. And then I never sleep through the whole night. And that's how I know. And then I would wake up in the morning and things would be broken. And then the thing is that this was when they had Google social networking. I received messages on Google. I would receive pictures on Google, and I would receive messages on Google just to let me know what it was they were doing. And I did actually, I'm not going to say this, but somebody who I know actually received an invitation on Twitter to view pictures of me on Twitter. I'm not going to say the person it is that I know, but I know who it was. And I received an email telling me that this person had received an invitation to view images of me on Twitter. So they wouldn't put a chain lock on my door. So the only thing that I could do was I could take my phone and wrap the phone around the door so they couldn't, the cable from the phone around the door so they couldn't get into my apartment. And then so finally I got sectioned, and then when I got sectioned, you know, because David Cameron got me sectioned, I already talked about that. I told them when I got sectioned that they were coming into my flat, and I had to take the phone cable and wrap it around the door just to keep people from getting in my apartment in the middle of the night. Well, of course, I wasn't believed, and but they did make me get a new chain lock on my door at my own expense. And so I got a chain lock on my door, so I felt relatively safe at night when I was sleeping. But they were still coming into my flat because, as I said about when I was mobbed out of Foster Wheeler, that all of these letters that, not all of them, but the really nasty letters that had been written to me, those have been removed from my apartment. So people were coming into my apartment. They were going through my apartment with a fine-tooth comb, and they were removing the letters that Foster Wheeler had written me that were really nasty. And they had replaced those letters with more moderately worded letters. And in addition to that, I said something about the deep state a couple of videos ago where I said that I received a letter saying that the government was not going to give me the information that they hold on me because my name falls into a classified file. That letter has been removed from my apartment as well. So all of these important letters that I could have used as my defense have been removed from my apartment. So people were going into my apartment. They were no longer going into my apartment when I was sleeping because I had the chain lock, but they were going into my apartment when I was out of the flat and doing things. And then so another incident, obviously, because I was really, really upset, you know, and one thing that happened was I was upset with my brother, so I sent him a message telling him that he's, as far as I'm concerned, he's just some bloke. And he sent me a message telling me he was going to send me a card. Well, I never received any card, but what I did receive was there was like an explosion or a short or something above my apartment, and that caused the heater in my apartment to go off, and it stayed on for like 24 hours. And so I'm just taking it that when he said that it was he was going to send me a card, which I never received any card from my brother. And I just take it that when my flat was vandalized, and it could have, the flat could have caught on fire because it happened in the middle of the night. It was a short of some kind above my flat, and then so you could smell burning, and then it caused this heater, this stone heater, to go on and stay on, and I was terrified. And finally, after a day, and then I rang up the cooperative to try to get it repaired, and they said, well, if we come over to fix it and there's no problem, you're going to have to pay for the visit. And so I said, well, okay. And so they never came, and finally the heater wore out, and what they had to do was they had to give me another heater. So I did get another heater. although I never use it because I can't afford to use it. And then there was another instance, this was in 2018, when people ramped up the harassment, and people that, I believe it was people that I live with, and if it wasn't people that I live with, it was certainly, they knew who it was. That's, if it wasn't people I live with, it was definitely, they knew who it was and they let it go on. But they vandalized the inside and the outside of my apartment. And I'm not going to say what they did because I don't want to give anybody any ideas. But I phoned the police. The police wouldn't do anything. And I said I was going to make a complaint to the police because they wouldn't do anything about what was happening. And they just said they were leaving. And so I'm going to make another video about the police as well. And then so they would vandalize the inside and the outside of my apartment. They would do things to make it, because I have to climb up and climb downstairs to get into my apartment. They would do things to make it unsafe. That's the only thing that I'm going to say. And then the neighbors, because while all this was going on, people that I live with were acting strangely. You know, like they seemed to be really pleased that I was in a relationship with my boyfriend. They were keeping track of when I was going to work, because they would stop me and ask me if I was on my way to work. And so I went on Facebook, told the housing cooperative one person that I thought was involved. And of course they told that person, and that person got really nasty. And then so what they did, in addition to the vandalism inside and outside of my apartment, they vandalized other people's apartments, and they blamed me. They said I did it, which I didn't do it. And then so I got sectioned again. And then whenever I got sectioned again, I appealed the section. And then when I appealed the section, I found out 3 people who were saying things about me to the CMHT, that's Community Mental Health Team. And so basically it was an horrendous situation that I found myself in. And these people that I live with created that situation because of the things that they were doing inside and outside of my apartment. And they were also ringing the Community Mental Health Team and saying things about me to the Community Mental Health Team. And then so all this happened, and finally, after 2 months, I got out of Prospect Park. But I was walking down the street, so I didn't want to speak to the people I live with any longer because of what they did, because I knew that they were behind it all. If they weren't behind it, they definitely knew who was behind it. And I don't know that they weren't working with Foster Wheeler. They probably, for some of it, they probably were working with Foster Wheeler. I do believe that it was financially motivated. I believe that it was partly racially motivated, because I'm a minority where I live, and I think it was definitely financially motivated. I mean, I'm a very money-driven person, so I can't believe that they would do the things that they did unless they thought they were going to get some financial benefit out of it. But who knows, they could be so sick that they just did it for fun. So one day I was walking on the street, and one of the perpetrators saw me on the street, and she told me she was sorry for the way she treated me. But it was too late. It's too late. You can't say you're sorry after you've done all those things, and then just say, oh, sorry, because what they did traumatized me so much that one of the things that they did in particular, I could have had a heart attack or a stroke. And I think that was the intention. I think the intention was to do things to get me worked up in such a state of anxiety that I would have a heart attack or a stroke. So it's too late to say you're sorry. It's too late. You can't say you're sorry after you've done something like that to try to harm somebody irrevocably. You know, if I had a stroke, you know, I could be paralyzed. If I had a heart attack, you know, it's too late. You just can't do that. But she just thinks that she can say she's sorry after all the things that she and her co-conspirators have done. And then I also would like to point out that in 2013, the man that lived right across from me died. He died in the apartment, and he lay there for several weeks while maggots and everything were all over the apartment because what had happened. He lay there for such a long time that maggots and everything were all over the building that we live in. And the police had to bust the door down, and they had to fumigate the whole building because of that. And where I live, the people I live with didn't even attend his funeral. I attended his funeral because I felt guilty about the fact that I wasn't very nice to him because he was so strange. But I did actually attend his funeral, but nobody else from the place where I live attended his funeral. And I looked at there was a newspaper article about that, and it said that the cause of death was inconclusive. So they never determined the cause of death. So we don't know what caused this man's death, and nobody's really investigated it. And where I live, it's a pretty dangerous place, but I have no choice. I have to live here because I'm destitute. And I just wanted to say that I know Foster Wheeler was behind a lot of the harassment, a lot of the going into my apartment and taking things, a lot of the vandalism, but they had to have help because the people that I live with, they had to allow people to get into the building. And then if people came into the building, they had to be suspicious, and obviously nobody raised any concerns. And then so the only thing that I did was I had a set of keys in the office where I worked because I was a single person. I didn't have any dependents. So I kept a set of keys there. So just in case anything happened, I would have an extra set of keys. So Foster Wheeler did have they did have access to a set of keys where I live. And whenever I tried to tell people this, like the mental health people, I wasn't believed. All of the things that I told them that happened, I wasn't believed. And I was just given a diagnosis of a mental illness. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude this video because I've told you about things that were going on where I live. And lots more went on. They were behaving very strangely. They vandalized my flat. They vandalized outside of the flat. They made it unsafe for me to be inside the flat. They made it unsafe for me to be outside of the flat. I'm not going to say all the things that they did because I don't want to give anybody any ideas. But that's basically what happened. And then after all the things they did, they contacted CMHT, that's Community Mental Health Team, and said things about me to CMHT to get me sectioned. And I wasn't believed. All the things that they did, I wasn't believed. And so it was a horrendous situation. And so it's not good enough to come to me and say, sorry. It's just not good enough. So because my health has been ruined, my career has been ruined, my credibility has been destroyed. So it's not good enough to see me on the street and say, sorry. you know, and they try to talk to me now, but I'm just civil to them. So that concludes this video. Thank you so much for watching the video and listening to me and knowing what happened where I live. If you like my video, please like and subscribe, and I will be making another video soon.